later in the day to make a statement before flying back to Port Sudan. Just 2 weeks ago, a group of the official requests from the Sudanese government for mediation, but they say that they are open to step in and provide any kind of assistance for Sudan. This is quite significant also for al-Burhan, because this is a moment where he's trying to portray himself as a legitimate de facto leader of Sudan, at the same time when we are seeing Hemeti facing more restrictions, particularly the latest sanctions by the United States of America targeting his brother, who is his deputy at the Rapid Support Forces, and also the decision by Burhan to ban the RSF. So this is going to be a moment for him to ask Qatar for more political and financial support as the conflict gets into an extremely delicate stage.
Hashim, Burhan is expected to go to Saudi Arabia next. What can Gulf countries do at this moment to end the conflict?
So since the start of the conflict in April, no one managed to somehow secure a massive advantage on the ground. For Burhan, this could be the moment to go to the Gulf countries, which have huge political leverage in Sudan, for two messages. First, the need to help him navigate through this complex political landscape and give him more support. And when he's asking for support, he wants also strong messages from the Gulf countries saying that they're not going to be siding with Mohammed Hamdan Hemeti, his rival and the leader of the Rapid Support Forces. He will be also asking for more financial support. But as we know, Marlene, Gulf countries are not on the same page when it comes to how to move forward when it comes to Sudan, and also who should be having a bigger say. They will have, first of all, to invite all the political parties to negotiate a political settlement. And the opposition, particularly the Forces for Change, are saying that there needs to be a reform of the security forces. The army has to step aside and pave the way for a civilian government to take over. For the time being, the biggest concern for al-Burhan, who is the chairman of the Sovereign Council, is his political survival and the defeat of Hemeti. Unless he gets to that point, it's going to be extremely difficult to negotiate any way out of this crisis in Sudan.
Okay. For now, Hashim Al-Bara there for us in Doha. You will be monitoring that visit of General Burhan into Qatar today. Let's turn to Hiba Morgan, who is live for us in Khartoum. Hiba, do we know why General Burhan has made this move to dissolve the Rapid Support Forces now, given the army has been fighting the RSF since April?
Well, this was a decision that was expected from the army chief and the head of the Sovereignty Council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, since the conflict started in mid-April, and it came nearly 5 months later. Now, part of the reason why it came at this time and not at the beginning of the conflict could be because of how regional countries and the international community has been dealing with the Rapid Support Forces. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs just days ago issued a statement to the African Union committee saying that they should not be receiving members of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces because they're a rebel force against the government. So the fact that regional countries and the international community was still dealing with the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces as a legal entity established here in Sudan based on a law could be one of the reasons why the head of the Sovereignty Council decided to disband and dissolve officially the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces and nullify the 2017 law that gave it legitimacy and made it under the control of the commander-in-chief of the army. So that basically means, with that decision, that basically means that the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces is no longer part of the organized forces here in Sudan, but rather it's now a militia that the army is fighting.
Okay, and where are we in terms of the latest fighting in the country? I mean, does it appear that any one side has the upper hand?
Well, we've seen over the past couple of weeks the paramilitary rapid support forces launching several attacks against one of the largest army bases in the capital Khartoum, in the southern part of the capital Khartoum, trying to take over. Including on Wednesday, they launched another attack trying to take over that military base belonging to the Sudanese army, and were not able to do so. But we've also seen more artillery shellings by both sides against the opposite positions. So the RSF has been launching more artillery strikes against positions of the Sudanese army. The army has been launching more artillery strikes and airstrikes against the positions of the paramilitary rapid support forces. And we've also seen an increase in the number of civilian casualties. Just over the past 3 days alone, more than 50 civilians have lost their lives as a result of being caught in the crossfire between the warring sides. But nearly 5 months on, no side, whether it's the RSF or the Sudanese army, has a very decisive upper hand over the other for them to claim that they are actually winning the battle in Khartoum and in Sudan.
Thank you for that update. Hiba Morgan there for us in Khartoum. Hundreds of trucks are stranded at the main border crossing between Pakistan and Afghanistan after gun battles between security forces on Wednesday. Trucks are backed up for kilometers on both sides of the border waiting to cross. The security situation remains tense. Pakistani government and military officials say they are in contact with Afghan authorities to try and diffuse tensions. Let's cross to our correspondent Kamal Haider, who is at that Torkham border crossing for us. Good to see you, Kamal. So firstly, tell us what the situation is at the border right now and remind us why this situation has arisen.
Well, first of all, as you can see, this is a meandering road that passes through the Khyber Pass. It then reaches the Torkham border region, which is just a few hundred meters from where we are. This is, of course, a lifeline for Afghanistan, and every time there are tensions on the border, it is the traders and the truck drivers who suffer the most. There are hundreds of trucks on the Pakistani side that are carrying perhaps non-perishable items, but the trucks on the Afghan side are carrying grapes, tomatoes, garlic, vegetables and other fruits, and those, of course, are going to be lost if this continues any longer. Now, the recent crisis began after the Afghans decided, that is the Afghan Taliban, decided to set up a new post. According to the Pakistanis, this was in no man's land. Both countries have their positions already established on this border. So there was an objection from the Pakistani side, after which the Pakistanis say the Afghan Taliban authorities, their forces started to fire across the border at the Pakistani positions, and the Pakistanis retaliated with that fire. 2 people injured on this side, no confirmation on any casualties on the other side. But it was that skirmish, which lasted for almost an hour, that brought things to a grinding halt. And so now you see trucks on both sides, people who want to cross over to Afghanistan, patients who are coming from Afghanistan, ordinary people, now all suffering because of this closure.
As you say, this is the main border crossing between Pakistan and Afghanistan, a lifeline. Where do you see this going? Because this border closure has happened before.
Yes, there have been several occasions where the border closes after tensions between the two sides. However, then it reopens after negotiations. Neither side can afford to prolong this because it is a loss not just for the Pakistanis but for the Afghans living on the other side as well. Both countries need to improve that relationship because Pakistan cannot afford to have bad relations on its western border, because it also has to contend with the eastern border where its relations with India are not very good. So this is indeed crucial, but at the end of the day, such incidents cause a lot of damage, loss of revenue on both sides, and both sides, of course, both countries have a economic crisis. They're not doing too well, so such incidents not helping in any way. However, there is an expectation that once again the two sides will realize that it is in nobody's interest, nobody gains anything from this, and so everybody will be hoping that the border should reopen within the next few days, if not weeks.
Thank you for that, Kamal Haider at the Torkham border crossing. Torrential rains have flooded parts of southern Europe, leaving at least 14 people dead. We have reporters across the region. In a moment, we'll hear from Rasul Sada, who is in Turkey, reporting on the flash floods that have lashed the northwestern part of the country. But first, this report by John Zoropoulos in Greece from the town of Lamia.
The people of Volos say they've never seen anything like it. Cars washed out to sea, roads in and out of the city severed by torrents, and streets impassable with mud. The fire service has told residents to stay indoors because rain may have undermined roads that appear to be safe. Volos is now without electricity, without telecommunications, without fresh water.
The roof fell in from the rain. The damage is huge. They should help us. I have a family and kids. How are we going to sleep? Last night we slept here and there. It's unbelievable.
Residents in Volos say they've been unable to find local government officials. Municipal resources seem overwhelmed.
The city of Volos is living a tragedy. This was the epicenter of the storm. No one has seen anything like it before.
Volos received half a year's worth of rain in just 2 days. Sudden rainfall has historically caused flooding in Greece, and it's left the scars of dry torrent beds throughout the landscape over the millennia. But experts now speak of unprecedented volumes of water. That also means unprecedented volumes of mud and debris carried downstream.
I'm 44 years old and I've never seen something like this. We know that in Pelion in Zagora there is a lot of rainfall, but this was unprecedented. It's never happened before. The damage was caused by the river, the torrent.
It's Greece's second natural disaster in a few weeks. During the heat of summer, 150,000 hectares of forest and farmland were burnt by wildfires. The country is counting the cost of the power of nature once again. John Zoropoulos, Al Jazeera, Lamia.
These scenes are becoming increasingly common in Turkey's largest city. A month's worth of rain fell within hours in Istanbul. Several streets turned into rivers and dozens of cars were washed away. Officials say they received around 4,000 emergency calls, and the floodwaters damaged 2,000 homes and businesses. Tourists were also swept away by a torrent that raged through a campsite in the northwestern city of Kırklareli. Cleanup efforts are underway in Istanbul.
It's a disaster, the biggest we have seen in 20 years. It may take us more than 2 months to reopen our store.
The Kitelli district is renowned for its furniture manufacturers. These showrooms are usually teeming with customers from all over the world. Authorities estimate the cost of the damage on this street alone is around $50 million, and the government says it will compensate business owners. Istanbul is home to more than 17 million people, but urban planners have warned the sprawling city is not adequately equipped to withstand extreme weather caused by climate change, and residents are afraid that the worst has yet to come. Rasul Sardar, Al Jazeera, Istanbul.
And in neighbouring Bulgaria, a storm is raging across the southern part of the country. It's causing severe flooding. So far, 4 people have been confirmed dead. Officials say around 4,000 people have been affected by the disaster. Still ahead on Al Jazeera, Gabon's military release deposed President Ali Bongo, saying he is now allowed to leave the country. And a new study reveals a sharp rise in the number of cancer cases in people younger than 50.
Drought is devastating war-torn Somalia and intensifying a hunger crisis that has claimed the lives of around 40,000 people, half of whom were children under 5 years old. But at the heart of this tragedy lies a tale of the immense resilience and determination of a people fleeing violence while at the mercy of escalating and unforgiving climate change. People in Power, Somalia, a fight for survival on Al Jazeera.
The Geneva International Motor Show is coming to Qatar. Discover more at jimsqa.com.
Examining the impact of today's headlines.
We're playing now in a new climate. We don't really understand what the rules are, how hot it can get.
Setting the agenda for tomorrow's discussions.
What drew you to boxing?
I've seen girls in every sport except boxing.
International filmmakers and world-class journalists bring programs to inform and inspire you.
How old are you?
You should never ask a lady how old her code is.
On Al Jazeera.
You're watching Al Jazeera. Reminder of our top stories this hour. Sudan's army chief has arrived in Qatar for talks with the Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Abdel Fattah al Burhan will be discussing bilateral relations as well as aid for Sudan. Hundreds of trucks are stranded at the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan after gun battles between security forces on Wednesday. The Pakistani government says it is talking to Afghan authorities to defuse tensions. Central and northern Greece have been drenched by 2 days of torrential rain, causing major floods. The emergency services has told residents to stay indoors because rain may have damaged roads that appear to be safe. Gabon's military has released the deposed President Ali Bongo from house arrest, saying that he is free to leave the country. Bongo has met with the head of the United Nations Office for Central Africa at his residence in Libreville. Now, shortly after his release, he was also visited by the President of the Central African Republic. Bongo was overthrown by the army last week. The military took control shortly after he was declared the winner in disputed elections.
The Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, CTRI, reaffirms that, given his state of health, the former President of the Republic, Ali Bongo Ondimba, is free to move about. He may, if he wishes, travel abroad for medical checkups.
Nicholas Hack has more from Dhaka.
It seems that President Ouattara from the Central African Republic, the chief negotiators from the Central African states, has succeeded in at least bringing Ali Bongo out of detention. There was this video circulating just on Wednesday after the coup of Bongo calling for people to make some noise to try to set him free. Now he has the option to leave the country if he wishes. Now, the statement made by the military junta or the government of transition say that Ali Bongo was released or freed on medical grounds. He suffered a stroke 5 years ago. He hadn't had access to his doctors. Now, there's several countries that could welcome him, notably Morocco, where he's been before when he had issues with his health. However, for his family, it's another issue. His wife, who's being held on the 4th floor of the presidential palace, or his son Nourdine, all of whom are accused of high treason. And according to the new strongman of Gabon, Brice Oligui Nguema, they will have to face justice. They're accused of stealing money from the state coffers. Now, Brice Oligui Nguema is acting swiftly. Although he said that he would take his time during this transition, he's already removed the key members of the Constitutional Court. He's made a series of arrests, notably the Minister of Oil in this country that had exported $6 billion of oil last year. People are living in poverty and people are getting more and more impoverished. So the question that's being asked is, where did all that money go? Oligui acting swiftly to try to rebuild trust in the democratic institutions, and in doing so, he's gaining popular support. Nicholas Hawke, Al Jazeera, Dakar.
Leaders are gathering for the final day of the ASEAN summit in the Indonesian capital, Jakarta. US Vice President Kamala Harris, China's premier, and Russia's foreign minister will come together around the table, offering a rare chance of direct top-level diplomacy between the nations. The 10-nation alliance remains split on Russia's war in Ukraine and on the ongoing crisis in Myanmar. The number of people younger than 50 diagnosed with cancer has increased by nearly 80% over the past 30 years. That's according to a new study. Research is published in the British Medical Journal. The deadliest types include cancer of the breast, lungs, bowel and stomach. More than 1 million people aged 50 or younger die of the disease every year. Experts are still in the early stages of understanding the reasons behind the rise in cases. Dr. Syed Ali is an oncologist working at the St. John of God Hospital and Icon Cancer Centre. He says the rise is due to better detection, but also lifestyle factors.
It's an interesting study, first of all, and it is very hard to really tease out how much of that is due to each of those factors. But what we know so far is that it is a mix of both increasing population, increasing screening, increasing technology. But in addition, we are also seeing a significant increase due to the lifestyle factors, both with smoking, alcohol, obesity, lack of exercise, lack of fresh fruits and vegetables. And the study did not really differentiate as to how much of that could be due to each of those factors. But in our practice as an oncologist, I do see a specific group of people who are young and who have a typical type of, let's say, a breast cancer, which is a younger people getting a breast cancer or a younger person getting a colon cancer, and they definitely have a different biology, a different way they respond to treatment, and a different prognosis. So certainly we are seeing a different type of cancer in younger people, and also the number of younger people in those type of cancer are also changing quite rapidly.
The former mayor of Mexico City has been picked as the governing party's presidential candidate for next year's election. Claudia Sheinbaum is a staunch ally of the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. It means Mexico could elect its first female president in June of next year. Last week, the opposition alliance selected 60-year-old Senator Xochitl Gálvez as their candidate. In September of 2021, the small Central American country of El Salvador was the first to make the cryptocurrency Bitcoin legal tender. It's had mixed results. Tourism is up, but it seems not many people actually use it. John Holman looks at the experiment on its second anniversary.
It's now 2 years since El Salvador became the first country in the world to introduce Bitcoin as legal tender, along with its regular currency, the dollar. So has the experiment succeeded? The general verdict? Not yet, at least. One of the big selling points of the plan was that Salvadorans would be able to receive remittances from relatives in the US through Bitcoin using a digital Chiva wallet. But according to stats from El Salvador's central bank, most have chosen not to. Less than 2% of remittances went through cryptocurrency and digital wallets so far this year. Then there's Bitcoin City, a planned paradise for Bitcoin enthusiasts powered by geothermal energy with low taxes and crypto mining facilities. It was presented by the president at a bombastic event in November 2021.
Because this is a fully ecological city that works and it's energized by a volcano.
But so far, critics say, that building has yet to begin.
This first bond is...
At the same ceremony, the strategist behind El Salvador's cryptocurrency adoption announced the forthcoming creation of Bitcoin bonds.
The first one is going to be a $1 billion bond. And what makes it a Bitcoin bond is because it's backed by Bitcoin. So half of the $1 billion will go into buying Bitcoin. The other half will go towards infrastructure, specifically building energy infrastructure and Bitcoin mining.
But the so-called volcano bonds have also yet to materialise. Meanwhile, President Bukele has been using government funds himself to buy bitcoins for the nation, announcing on Twitter when and how much he's purchased. Economists have been using those tweets to work out how those trades have gone.
At the price of Bitcoin right now, we're looking at a theoretical loss of $45.4 million of public funds in these operations. And those are just estimates based on the president's tweets, because there is no information publicly available about how much he's traded.
But while information might be hard to come by in El Salvador's Bitcoin experiment, one thing is for sure, its president isn't giving up yet. John Holman, Al Jazeera.
Okay, that's it from me, Marlene Saeed. You can find lots more of information on our website, aljazeera.com. Weather is next. Then Inside Story looks at the weeks of protests in Syria over the rising cost of living. Do stay with us.
Hey, they're still keeping tabs on Storm Daniel after it dumped copious amounts of rain. For example, central Greece, we saw about half a meter of rain in the span of a few hours. The storm system has left behind a legacy of still torrential downpours in that part of the country. Darker the blue and the yellow, the more intense the rain is. The storm system, though, is spinning around the central Mediterranean. I put this a day forward now on Friday. This becomes a story for the tiny island nation of Malta, northwest Libya. We know it doesn't take much rain there to see some flooding. Okay, back to the here and now. A bit of a breather before the next round of rain comes in for Portugal. The coast of Portugal, some pretty intense downpours there on Friday. Be aware of that. Meantime, for the northwest, all about the heat. Look at this, 30 degrees on the nose in London. Haven't seen a temperature that high in quite some time. Also the heat through France and the Low Countries. And if I take you to Central Europe right now, it is fairly quiet, save for a bit of cloud cover for Eastern Europe. Off to Africa we go. It's also a story about the heat to the northeast. Cairo at 42 degrees. We've got this batch of intense rain through Mali as we dip toward the south now. Temperatures running on the high side in Windhoek. And this breeze is going to pump up temperatures in Bulawayo. 32, the high for you on Thursday. Enjoy. That's a snapshot of your weather. See ya.
The latest news as it breaks.
Niger's military leaders say they want to renew military and defense agreement with France. And demonstrators who support the coup have started a sit-in in front of this military base.
With detailed coverage.
Agro-businesses like this cattle ranch are the driving engine of the Bolivian economy.
From around the world.
Estimates vary, but it's reckoned as many as 3,000 schools have been damaged or completely destroyed since the start of the war.
They've been largely neutral during 12 years of war, but now Syria's Druze are protesting in their heartland. They're demanding Bashar al-Assad step down, but why now? And what's really behind their anger? And could these demonstrations gain momentum? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. Weeks of demonstrations in southern Syria against rising costs have escalated into rallies against President Bashar al-Assad. The protests are taking place in As-Suwaida, a government-held province that's home to the minority Druze community. Why is the sect that stayed neutral in the 12-year conflict now calling for the president to step down? And how will a government known for its brutal crackdown on dissent react? Lots to discuss with our guests, but first, Kunsulf Sharif sets the scene for us.
Anger on the streets of Syria. Demonstrations that began weeks ago, sparked by surging inflation and a spiraling economy, have transformed into calls for political change.
We would like to send a message to the authorities and to Bashar al-Assad himself. We want to topple you, even if you distribute stationery or gas for free, or even if planes shower As-Suwaida province with gold from the sky.
Rallies are centered in the province of As-Suwaida, home to the minority Druze community. The sect has stayed largely neutral in the conflict between Bashar al-Assad and those seeking to oust him in the 12-year civil war. But the rising cost of living is leading to public criticism of the president, even in government-controlled areas where residents use smart cards to buy state-subsidized goods.
I'm a proud Syrian, but I'm not proud of First Lady Asma al-Assad's gift, which is the smart card. The card will kill us all, whether we're queuing in front of a fuel station or a bakery.
The civil war has taken a toll on Syria. Much of the country's infrastructure is destroyed and the economy is in shambles. The Syrian pound plunged to a record 15,500 to the US dollar last month. The local currency was trading at 47 pounds to the dollar at the start of the conflict. Western sanctions have only compounded the crisis.
I have 4 children from the 1st to 10th grade. The cost of stationery for each child is about $15, and this is only for basic stationery. Prices have doubled over the past year.
So far, there's been no reaction from the government, known for its swift crackdown on dissent. In 2011, authorities responded violently to peaceful protests, leading to a complex civil war involving foreign governments and several armed groups. The fighting has killed more than 500,000 people and dispersed millions more. The UN says most of the population has been pushed into poverty. And with soaring prices, the calls for political change in Syria that began more than a decade ago are growing louder once more. Kulsum Sharif for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. In Washington, D.C. is Moaz Mustafa, Executive Director of Syrian Emergency Task Force. That's a non-profit that focuses on political advocacy, civil governance and humanitarian aid.